So to focus a little bit more on these steps already from the earliest level of a project, and here I must say that this guideline is actually mostly focused from the project development stage and forward. We must establish what we call a risk and opportunity register. I have earlier talked about risk, which is basically looking at the negative aspects, like when you have increased stream flow causing maybe higher flood levels or drought. But there's also opportunities where an increased stream flow might actually result into opportunities for producing more electricity or storage that could be used during droughts. So we establish a matrix or what we call a register in this case, whereby we put out a list of all the climate stresses for each project alternative or each infrastructure alternative, depending on the stage where you are, and then define the threat or opportunity, and then define the potential loss or gain, and then compute the likelihood or the probability for it to occur. And this might be based on either qualitative analysis, or it could be based on a quantitative analysis, which is possible for some risks. And then we will check out the severity, which is basically the potential loss should that occur. And then from this, we compute the risk or the opportunity. And then we have some color coding there for both the potential gain and the potential loss, which is a risk. And based on this color coding, we decide whether we need to treat the risk or not. And this is very important because at this level, you must involve the stakeholders to determine what level of risk they think might require treatment and what level of risk they feel that they can take forward and maybe monitor and find solutions as the project goes on, because it may not always be possible to treat to find treatments for all the risks, or maybe because of economic or other limitations, or the stakeholders might decide that at some point in future they'll just build in a mechanism to deal with a particular risk. For example, if it's a dam, one may decide not to build a very long spillway, but decide, or very wide spillway to handle a particular flood, but decide to monitor changes in climate data, and at some point in future maybe review the construction, or maybe just decide to choose a site where it's possible to build in an extra spillway. So there is this. So it's very important that stakeholders are involved. So this guideline does not provide particular information for you to make a decision, say this is what you should do, this is what the risk you should take, but stakeholders must be involved. We provide the scoring mechanism, but it's the stakeholders must be involved in actually deciding the level of risk that will be taken. Now, this risk register is updated as one moves through the climate proofing stages, or the project development stages. So at this earliest stage, as you go forward, a lot of things might change. Maybe you thought increased stream flow was going to be a big problem, and then you find a treatment, and then you redesign the project, and then at the next level you find that you've addressed that risk, and so you have to keep updating this risk register. More details about how to do this, of course, can be found in the documents that are going to be uploaded online. And of course, the discussions between a forum that is going to be put up will also provide an opportunity for finding help in how to do this scoring. Just to summarize, the differences in risk assessment for the different stages are as follows. The risk register setup does not change with the decision-making context or with the project stages. It just evolves. The key difference for the different contexts is how the potential risk is defined. At the identification stage, one may deal with issues in a general way, but while at the project preparation stage, the focus moves to specific components. The provided templates cannot anticipate all the different permutations of risk and components, and this should be determined project by project. A little bit more about risk treatment, because this is very important, because it's through this risk treatment where we identify what to do to deal with climate threats. So the first step is to identify the risk treatment options, and the guideline has tried to list typical threats to water infrastructure, and there's lots of literature and references that are also provided that can help the users of the guideline to identify risk treatment options for the different risks. And once you've identified them, then you assess adaptation measures, and this might include some economic analysis, because it's not only about identifying a measure that might solve the risk, but is it actually doable? And if it's not, then like earlier said, the stakeholders may have to decide whether it's a risk that they will be able to handle now, or they will be able to just monitor and handle at some point in future, but at least they're aware. And that's where the risk communication comes in, that a lot of times it may not be possible to actually have a physical solution, and then it might be necessary to actually just communicate the risk and monitor and review as the project goes on. So to summarize, you can there's a number of treatments in this particular case, is that you can decide to avoid the risk by just not doing anything. You can accept the risk, and in some cases also increase the risk. You must remove the risk source, or you might change the likelihood of the risk by creating some intervention measures. And you might also change the consequences by creating some physical measures so that even if you don't change, for example, at the dam design to handle flooding, and or maybe to increase storage so that a downstream community is protected from flooding, you instead go for protecting that community downstream. So then you know that in case it happens that a huge flood is released from my future infrastructure, the community downstream is not affected. So there's different ways you can do it. You can do this, and it could also be others like sharing risk or just retaining the risk and continuing. But it's important that it is communicated, and that in the monitoring plan, the solutions were clearly explained, or the adaptations are clearly explained and monitored, and then should anything change at some point in future, then new interventions are made. Like I said earlier, climate change is like an always moving goal, and we do not expect this stationarity to continue, and so it may not always be possible to come up with a design that will handle everything that is expected to happen in the next 50, 100 years of the life of the project. And such a design might sometimes become too expensive. So it might, in many cases, be necessary to just build in ways to monitor and ways to improve or identify sites and solutions that are adaptable, or that can be changed as time goes on. I've said a lot about monitoring and evaluation as a very important way to go forward, because we may not be able to anticipate everything. Stakeholders should be involved, and there must be a monitoring plan, and there must be a way to actually follow up this plan and identify threats and find out how to deal with them as they come. And in many cases, it might be also for projects that are already running necessary to decide whether a comprehensive climate risk assessment is necessary during the next project cycle stage, and that is during the project development, but also during the operation of the project. And even when a project is in operation, it's important to always update this risk register so that we know where we stand and find a way to deal with climate change. It is not possible to cover all the aspects of the climate proofing guideline in this short introductory video, and there is a lot of information that has been left out. But I hope that this presentation has provided you a teaser of what the climate proofing guideline is all about. I am hoping to be available as one of the people who has developed this guideline to help on the online forum that the GIZ and the Nile Basin is creating to support future users who want to do climate proofing for their projects. So it would be nice to hear some feedback and some questions as time goes on. And as I said earlier, there's a lot of information in the text that are going to be provided and online guidance. And I hope that will be useful for you to carry out climate proofing on your projects. Thank you. I think I'll stop now, and I wish you the best as you use this guideline for your projects.